This is the Owen J. Roberts Board of School Directors Special School Board meeting being held on July 13th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We're going to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States
of America
and to the republic
for which
it stands,
one
nation
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
All right, I'm going to please ask if you can join us in a moment of silence as we reflect on those serving in the United States Armed Forces, both past and present, the elected leaders for the state of Pennsylvania, and elected leaders of our nation. We have much to be thankful for in our community. All right, you may be seated. All right. So item 3 is public comment on agenda items. So this is for information, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegates pertaining to items on the agenda. Speakers are to indicate your name, township or residence, and the item on the agenda to which your comments are addressed. Speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in future deliberations. And then also, if you have any questions for the school board, please email the Board of School Directors. The email address is listed on the agenda. You can easily access it and you'll receive a written response. So just a guideline for anyone that would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function. And when it's your turn to speak, please state your name and your township of the residence.
Before we begin public comment this evening, we want to introduce our solicitor for this evening is John Mirovich.
Good evening, everyone.
From Fox Rothschild. Thank you, Mr. Mirovich, for representing us this evening.
Thank you.
All right. Well, do we have
This is prompted. There is no raised hands.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to item 4, which is new business. So this is going to be our interview for the new school board member. I just wanted to thank everyone that submitted their name for the vacant seat. I'm sure this decision wasn't taken lightly. I'm just going to review the process here so that everyone understands and make sure that we don't have any questions. Mrs. Crumrine has pulled a random list of board members and candidates to interview. Each candidate will have 10 minutes. We ask that you take a minute or two to introduce yourself and your background. The remainder of the time will be spent answering questions. I've asked that we time each session, but I'm happy to let candidates finish their thoughts before we move on. Once we've gone through the 8 candidates, I'm asking each board member to rank their top 4. This will be done on a Google Sheet that will be shared for the public to see. Then we will give each person a number 1 through 4, 4 being the highest. We will consolidate each of the candidate numbers and hopefully come up with 4 candidates to move on to tomorrow. We will also be potentially taking a 15-minute recess before we post the Google Drive. We'll be actively filling it in for the public to see, but we will be taking a recess 15 minutes before we do so. Is there any questions from the board?
I'm getting a little feedback. I don't know if anybody else is.
Yes.
I am as well.
We can all mute and unmute tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's suggest that every all board members mute your microphone at this time, and then you'll have the ability to unmute when it's your turn to ask a question.
Okay. All right. So does anyone have a question before we begin the process here? No? Okay, Jackie, do you want to start with the first board member and candidate?
Hey, Leslie, I just a clarifying point. So when we get to the spreadsheet, we can list a maximum of 4 choices, correct?
Yes.
But if we want to list 1 or 2 or 3, we have the flexibility to do that as well.
Yep.
Correct. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure. The first board member to interview will be Leslie Prophet, and she will be interviewing Mr. Daniel Doherty. Paul, would you unmute Mr. Doherty's mic, and I'll mute mine.
Mr. Doherty, if you could turn on your video and your microphone.
I've lost everybody.
I'll be right
Hmm.
in. Mr. Doherty, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Not start the video because the host has stopped it.
Okay, let's see what we get there. How about now?
There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Dan, how are you?
I'm good, Mrs. Prophet. How are you?
Not bad. All right, so just going to ask for you to tell me about yourself in a couple minutes, and then I'll start with questions.
Sure. So just so I know, it's okay for me to just make an opening statement here?
Sure.
Thank you. The school board, Dr. Lloyd, administrators, faculty, and residents of Owen J. Roberts School District. My name is Dan Doherty, and I come before you tonight as a candidate seeking to fill the current vacancy on the school board. Many of you may already be familiar with me, but I would like to take this opportunity to provide you with more of my background and what is motivating me to seek this seat. I graduated Temple University in 2002 with a degree in political science. I've spent the majority of my career in fundraising for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, and I'm currently the Associate Director for Annual Giving at the Shipley School in Bryn Mawr. Originally from Horsham, I moved to Phoenixville in 2004 and have been a resident of East Vincent Township since 2011, when my wife and I bought a vacant 150-year-old farmhouse that we are continually renovating. My son Liam will be entering the 3rd grade at East Vincent Elementary School in the fall, where I'm also currently serving as the recording secretary for the PTA. In addition, I've been a committee person for East Vincent Township Precinct 3 for 7 years. I believe strongly in volunteerism and doing what I can to help improve the community in which I live. In my professional career, I've gained experience in working with boards of directors and have a keen understanding of how nonprofit governance functions. In addition, I am results-oriented, driven to succeed, and have a willingness to learn when there is something that I don't know. I believe it is worth mentioning that of the entire slate of candidates seeking the current vacancy, I am the only one who ran in the most recent election and garnered over 4,500 votes from the residents of the district. I would ask that you take this into consideration as you move forward in the process, as I feel this provides me with standing among the community at large. With that being said, I would like to impress upon each member of the board that I unequivocally do not believe in playing politics with the futures of OJR students, and that members of the board are there to serve, are not there to serve their own interests, but to serve the best interests of the district. I affirm my commitment to work with each and all of you to do what is right and necessary to keep OJR moving forward. As I often stated during the school board race last year, my son still has many years of his OJR school career ahead of him, which means I'm vested in this school district both now and for the future. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I trust that you will make the right decision, and at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thanks, Dan. So my first question for you would be, what are the challenges that are currently facing our school districts in your eyes?
Well, I think the largest, most looming challenge right now is how to deal with the reopening of the school in the fall. I think everybody, all schools across the country are dealing with the issue of how do we safely return students to the classroom and continue to educate our students in the best way that we can. So right now, I think that's the most important issue facing the district in the immediate term.
Okay. And then what would you find to be the most difficult about being a member of the school board?
I think in my last couple of years of attending and being a part of the meetings for the OJR school board, I think the most difficult part would be in being able to find a way to meet all the varying concerns of the community residents, the school district itself, the students. So there's a myriad of issues that come before the board. And I think the most difficult is, and I believe this is where working with all the members is key, that there has to be unified front and moving forward in making the best decision possible for, when possible, for all the residents and students and stakeholders of the district.
Okay, great. What do you think you would enjoy the most?
I think I would enjoy the opportunity to be able to have make a lasting impact on the school district. I think that, as I said in my opening statement, being able to have an opportunity to do something meaningful and also give back to the community, I think is something that I think anybody who seeks this position, hopefully, is why they're in it in the first place. So I think that's what I would enjoy the most.
Okay. Sorry, I'm jumping between different pages of questions to make
That's
sure
okay.
ones I like. Let's see. So if you were faced with a tough issue as a board member, for example, raising taxes or cutting programs, what kind of information would you need to help you make your decisions?
Well, first, I think I would seek out all the pertinent information. Is that scenario where both of those issues are connected or exclusive of each other?
So I'll give you an example. For the past budget, we had to, because we had deficits in our budget for this coming school year, we had to make a decision to keep things in place or to bring our tax rate down. So that could kind of be your example.
The first thing I think I would do is seek the counsel from the administration as far as why we're faced with such a scenario. And then I think that if it comes down to it and a tough decision needs to be made and the rest of the board is in agreement, I think that I will defer to the majority opinion of the board.
Okay. Let's see. What is your, so obviously you didn't graduate from ONJ, but you chose to send your son to ONJ. So what is your impression of the school district and the community, and what's your vision for the future?
I've been very impressed. My son started at East Vincent Elementary starting in kindergarten. He's made a lot of great friends already. A lot of our friends are in the community in which we live that go to school with Liam. And overall, I think his teachers have been great. My wife and I have not had complaints with his teachers. I think he's in a great learning environment. There has been some issues within the last year or so at East Vincent, but I feel as if that's definitely turned a corner. I think that there was definitely a lot of listening done and advice taken from parents and stakeholders, and I think that it's definitely moving in the right direction. My hope for the future of the school district would be that it continues to thrive. And also, one of the things that I was really adamant about when I was running for the school board is I would like to see the district continue to rise in the school rankings.
Okay. What do you believe to be the responsibilities of the local school board?
I think the local school board has fiduciary responsibility for the district, academic responsibility for the district, oversight of administration, as well as technology for the school district. I think that it has a responsibility to the residents to make sure that it is spending their tax dollars in an appropriate manner. I believe that the school district has a responsibility to the residents of the district to be open and transparent about the decision-making process and how the district is run.
Okay. Let's see. So obviously you're aware of all the challenges we've been facing as a district. What motivated you at this point in time to put your name in for consideration?
I feel I have a lot to offer. I have a lot of energy. I have, as I mentioned again in my opening statement, desire and willingness to do what I can to see this district succeed. I don't believe in sitting on the sidelines. I met a lot of great people throughout the campaign, and I was, truth be told, I was disappointed that I didn't make it on, but now I have an opportunity where I feel I can get back in it to serve both the residents and the students of the district.
Let's see. How do you go about making decisions? And tell us about the last time new information or another point of view made you change your mind.
Well, I would say I'm not one that makes decisions unilaterally. And I've always made it a habit to seek out advice because I don't know everything. And as I said, I'm willing to learn. And I think that my decision-making process would be to weigh the pros and cons of both sides of an issue, as well as seek the advice and counsel of others, and then make my decision from there.
10 minutes.
Okay. I faced issues in my career. I don't want to get into specifics, but I've been faced with very tough decisions that in some cases were personnel related, so I can't get into very specifics, but I did what, at the end of the day, I did what was right, and that's what I'm always going to do.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And then I think we're going to move on to the next, sorry, I lost you, Jackie. There you are. The next candidate and the next school board member.
I'm here. The next school board member to interview will be Kathy DiMarino, and she will be interviewing Mr. Donald Foy.
Okay. If we could just get Mr. Foy unmuted.
I am unmuted. You have my video?
Not yet.
Okay, great.
Mr. Sanfran?
I'm sorry?
Mr.
Yeah, he has to start his video.
Oh, okay. Got you.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. Welcome, Mr. Foy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your interest in the school board. If you want to take 2 or 3 minutes to just introduce yourself, tell us your background and why you're here, and then we'll have some questions. I'll have some questions for you.
All right, I'm happy to. So as you pointed out, I'm Don Foy, and I really do want to thank the board, first of all, for considering me as a candidate for the board position. My wife, Joan, and I live in East Coventry and have for the past 14 years. Prior to that, we spent most of our adult lives in different parts of Chester County. Currently in East Coventry, I'm on the zoning hearing board, and I'm also on the steering committee for the Way Forward community. My background, first of all, I did get an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army Reserve. My employment was with a large multinational corporation in which I had responsibility for a very large IT organization across the U.S. And in that capacity, I had all of the normal responsibilities that you think of with that type of position. So, you know, not only was I responsible ultimately for multi-million-dollar budgets and hiring, staffing, planning, executing, all of those types of things that go with the job. I'd like to say in particular for this interview that I also learned a great deal about dealing with people, right? I reported to some higher level executives. I held a lot of peers and a lot of people that worked for me. And all those relationships were extremely important in being successful. And the other thing that I think is important is in my position, ultimately, I was responsible for making a number of very key decisions. And so while I'm capable, certainly, of making those decisions, my basis for making those decisions, it was really always to be informed decisions and based upon as much consensus as I could possibly get, right? So I was fortunate, very fortunate in my career. I was also very fortunate in my education. So I have a BA in economics. I was awarded a graduate assistantship in economics. Unfortunately, for family reasons, I wasn't able to complete that. But subsequently, I did go back to school and pursued a master's of engineering IT at Penn State. And while employed, I was chosen to attend a number of very prestigious business schools for the Darden School, University of Virginia, and the University of Washington. Right. So I'm retired now. And when I retired, I decided, after taking a little time to myself, to do a couple things. So one of the first things I did was to join the Starfish program at ONGR Roberts. And so I've been a member of that program since then, although I haven't actively participated in Starfish, in the last several years, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But when I was active, I volunteered at East Coventry Elementary School for 2 years and worked there helping first through third graders. After that, well, really while there, I got to know and to try to help a number of children that lived in Park Springs Section 8 housing here really in Spring City, Chester County. And so when I stopped working at the school, my wife and I both got in contact with Park Spring, and we've been volunteering there in various capacities ever since. And so we have been engaged in after school learning with the children, and worked on lunch programs, and started a chess club, and a whole bunch of things like that. And so pretty much been involved in volunteering with children. Several years ago, I did run for the school board and lost in the general election by a handful of votes. But I'm proud to say that when I did run, I received the endorsement of Roberts Education Association and Teachers Union. And I checked with them and believe that I still would have their backing if I were to stand again. So kind of gets to my current motivation for applying for this. Retirement's pretty nice, but I really have two primary motivations. First, I really have a genuine interest in children. I think the volunteering that I've mentioned kind of demonstrates some of that. I also raised 2 boys in the Downingtown School District, and have 5 grandchildren, all of whom unfortunately live in different state. So, but while bringing up my sons, I was very engaged not only with them, but I was on the West Bradford Youth Athletic Association board, and for many, many years, not only coached, but all kinds of different sporting activities, but also commissioner of a number of sports. And sorry about the home phone in the background.
That's okay.
My wife will pick it up in a minute. All right, so there's that motivation. The other motivation is where we are right now, what's going on. And as we all know, well, first of all, the board is faced with all kinds of decisions all the time. That's part of the job. Handling budgets and making staffing decisions and what type of programs and athletics and so forth. And all of those have been very difficult decisions. But right now, it's off the charts, obviously, right? So, with all of the problems right now socially within the country and the community going on that affect the school programs and the children in the school, and I know there's been some allegations of some sexual misconduct that the school is dealing with that are very difficult to handle. But so layered on top of all of that is, of course, the corona pandemic, and we're probably going to get some direction from the governor about whether the schools are open or not. What we're going to get from the federal government looks like it's going to be kind of a handbook of things that we may choose to do, but ultimately, what the school district does is going to be the decision of the school board. All right, that's one of their primary responsibilities. So, do we reopen fully? Do we open with a virtual type of education? If so, to what degree? And how do you make those things work? I know the board's working on those, struggling with them, but there's a whole myriad of issues. And I think I'm fairly well positioned to help make the proper decisions there and to help carry them out. I know I certainly am interested in doing so. Questions?
Well, great. Well, you made my job quite easy there because you talked about a lot of the topics that were on my list. But I do have a couple other questions I can ask. So if you're appointed or if you're not appointed to this position, are you planning on running for the seat when it comes up again in the next election? What do you think about for your future?
So who knows? I think that all depends on how things go. When a number of years ago, I considered this, and at that time I said that this is it, that this is the last time. Certainly no need to do that again, but things have changed. I've changed. Frankly, the board has changed, and the situation in the country has changed. So I certainly have no greater political aspirations or anything like that, but whether I actually run remains to be seen.
Okay. Yes, I'm sure you've also noticed that we are a very new board, and we came into this position thinking we were going to be doing different things than we are, but we're I can speak for everyone that we're happy to serve regardless of our crazy circumstances. But I want to know, how do you see yourself working with us, the members of the board, and our administrative team?
Okay. So first of all, I've attended a few of the school boards virtually, and did so in past years. And maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't know. I'm definitely not trying to kiss up here, but I'm really, really pleased with what I see with this board. Not only are you tackling tough issues, but the transparency that was always one of the key issues. The community was always clamoring for more information. This board's made great strides in that, and I know that's a tough balancing act sometimes. So there's that.
10 minutes.
Wow.
Go ahead, you can finish up. Go ahead.
And also, the harmony within the board. And so I won't say any more about this, but I have a great deal more that I could have said about the school board and the kind of decisions about reopening or other school alternatives. I've got some suggestions whether I get on the board or not. I'd like to at some opportunity make sure that they're added to the other things that you're considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your time and all that information. Very interesting, and thank you for all your volunteering all over the years. I'm sure that's done a lot of good for O&J Roberts. So thank you. Okay, next.
Okay. Next is Ms. Lydia Stutzman, who will be interviewing Michael Agila.
Didn't know if I could get myself off mute. Sorry about that. Okay. Michael, hello. Nice to see you. How are you? I'm well, thank you. So we'll start off with the norm, and if you wouldn't mind telling us a bit about yourself and why you're interested in becoming a board member.
Sure. I've worked for the same company over 34 years. I'm a statistical anomaly. I still work for the same company that I started with right out of college. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics, almost like a triple major with finance, marketing, and accounting. I got my MBA. I started with a big company, and I've been on the move ever since. I started in Massachusetts, continued on to Indiana, continued on to Mississippi, continued on to Tennessee, and been living in Pennsylvania now for about 21 years. A lot of people ask me, 34 years for the same company, aren't you bored? And I'm like, no, because it's not like I've sat in the same seat the whole time. I've gone from selling sandpaper and grinding wheels, calling on manufacturing, helping people make cars and airplanes and furniture, to then I sold bullet resistant and blast resistant glass, helping the federal government arm their embassies, helping Learjet make their airplane front windshields safer, and help work with the federal government on blast protection for buildings for US and outside the US. And now currently I work for another division selling roofing and siding. So while I do my day job as a sales manager in sales, I'm also already on many different teams within our organization. Historically, over my entire career, I've always been put on teams because I'm seen as someone who's moral, ethical, and honest, and will always share my opinion. The interesting thing about when I watched the 4-hour board meeting the other evening is it didn't seem like 4 hours. I was shocked when it was 10 o'clock because I thought I was still working, because it seemed like a work call, because there was discussions about returning to school or returning to work safely, because I get emails every day. The company I work for is worldwide. We get COVID updates on how to return back to plants, how to return back to offices. So there was the safety talk, there was the HR talk, there was the legal, there was finance, there was purchasing, talked about technology platforms and surveys. And that's basically what my life is at CertainTeed. The only thing that was missing is there was no update on research and development. 14 years ago, my wife and I and my 2 daughters, we moved to where we live now in North Coventry. Our first night in the house, the next morning when we woke up, it was my youngest daughter's first day of kindergarten. Last year, she graduated from OJR. We love the school. We love the school district. I've always wanted to volunteer, but since 1986, my job has always had 1 or 2 overnighters and sometimes 3 or 4, and sometimes not even getting home for the weekend. My entire work career, I've been on the road in hotels. Last spring, we had a major realignment, and my overnighters are now once a month. So the question is, why now? I have the time because of my job having changed. And I feel I'm the ideal candidate because I have no personal agenda for this. My oldest just graduated. My youngest is soon to graduate. All I want to do is help. I've been an effective member of many different multifunctional teams. I just want to help.
Great, thank you. So there's a lot to help with. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your perspective on what are those most important issues and what you bring to them?
Well, the first one obviously is return to school, but that's an issue that the whole world is facing, or return to work or return to office. That's the obvious. That's the 86,000 or 46,000 pound gorilla. But the other one that pains me is my daughter's basically brought to my attention that for the 3rd year in a row, someone was let go for having issues with contact. To me, that's a bigger issue. I've always lived in the corporate world. The company I work for is massive and worldwide. We go through training. I do 2 driver safety trainings a month. we do annual training program. I've participated in legal training, unconscious bias training, diversity inclusion, sexual harassment, effective performance reviews, just a whole bunch of things, managing a respectful workplace. To me, it's the overall training, the raising the level of the water to get everybody in a position. My daughters do not have a favorite teacher. They have a favorite teacher for every year. There are so many great people at OJR, and as people move on and move forward and move backwards, it is still an awesome living organism with a great group of people. And I just want to be a part of that and help.
Okay, great, thanks. What you watched the board meeting where you were saying we had a lot of discussion. What do you think would be the most challenging part of both being a member of that discussion group and also all of these things that you want to help with?
The hardest part was the difference between, I guess, public and corporate, because there's some things that I understand you have to publicly talk about, or everything there has to be total disclosure. So it was interesting to me, because some things to me maybe should have been done behind the scenes. But then again, I don't understand the whole legality of being transparent with a board. So that was odd for me. But what I got a kick out of is everybody wasn't agreeing, and that's good. Because if you have everybody with the same background, the same opinion, there's joy and happiness, and they always agree. But that doesn't mean the right decision is made. So I like the diversity. I love disagreement. Disagreement with polite conversation always gets you to where you need to go. And that's what I thought was great, was the disagreement and people chiming in and saying things, because that's what makes an effective team. You could have everybody with the same background be smiling nice and and agree and nod on everything, but it doesn't mean you did the right thing.
Great. Okay. And what do you, we asked earlier about what would you need to make those tough decisions between, for example, cutting a program or raising taxes. Tell us a little bit about how you go about making those type of, making a decision of that nature.
I'm data driven. I think in Excel. I put in Excel which healthcare. We got 3 versions of healthcare you can pick. I put that in Excel to find out my break-even point. You know, if we have unforeseen accidents, okay, we got to spend over this to make this. I'm data driven, and I love graphs. I love charts from being econ background. It's seeking input, and I'm smart enough to realize I'm opinionated. I always have my opinion, but that doesn't mean I'm right. And I am it never matters who's right. It only matters is that you do the right thing. And what I always do is you seek out the experts whose backgrounds are most relevant to that decision. I never overstep my bounds in my job about things that are not my expertise. And I wouldn't do the same thing on the board. What you need to do is you need to bring in the people where it's their background. It is their bread and butter. It's what they do for a living. It's their day job. Because then they bring strength and they end up bringing extra to the party. That's what you want.
Very good. Thank you. And what was the one? Hold on, I'm sorry, really quick.
This is different Zoom is different than MS Teams because I can't see myself. I don't see my picture. I do 3 or 4 meetings a day on Microsoft Teams, and I always see a little picture of myself in the corner. So I see what you see on Zoom. We don't do Zoom at the company I work for.
We don't either. We do Teams or Skype, same. If there is actually a little icon in the corner that has a bunch of grids, looks like a grid. If you hit that, you can see everybody.
So that's interesting. I've never had this many people in my office before.
We're all interviewing the whole room. So tell us a little bit more too about, you've shared with us about your experience in working with teams and how you like to have that polite discourse. How do you, the polite disagreement, I should say, right? Is that what you call it, polite disagreement? How do you know when you are, you're realizing that your communication style may need to change or you're having a negative impact on somebody else, something of that nature?
Well, that's where I'm the chameleon. I'm the middle child. I'm the one who's always getting groups together. I do that. As a sales manager, as a leader, I'm the coach, I'm the leader. I direct the person who's analytical to be more personal. I direct our salesperson in Raleigh who's very social to be more analytical. I realize I basically adapt my management style to what the employee needs. So doing the same thing in the team, it's also, you can say anything if you're polite and you preface it with my opinion is, as long as you never get personal. And then you politely ask questions. I don't understand why blah, 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 or help me understand. And as long as it's never personal and you ask the question properly to get more information, that's what drives conversation.
No, that's good. Thank you. And
That's 10 minutes.
okay. I guess I'm good then. That was very good. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, and that's perfect timing because now you're garbled and I can't hear you. This was fun. I appreciate it. I'm the ideal candidate. Give me a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to our next interview, and Mrs. Melissa Booth will be interviewing Mr. William Kleinfelter.
Good evening.
Good evening, Will. Nice to see you again. I just would like to preface this. We're really fortunate. We have 8 very good candidates, so this is a very hard decision. And I just wanted to say that we appreciate all of you coming forward, and we hope you all realize that this is a decision we need to make as a unit. So it is a very hard decision because, as I said, all 8 of you are really excellent candidates. Well, you can start by giving us your opening spiel.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, or Mrs. Booth. Good evening. My name is William Kleinfelter. I have been a resident of the O.J. Roberts School District for the past 31 years. I reside in South Coventry Township. My wife, Mary Jane, and I have 2 children. My daughter, Morgan, is a 2012 graduate, and my son, Austin, is a 2013 graduate of the O.J. Roberts High School. I am employed by Cerner Corporation located in the Great Valley Corporate Center. I am currently in my 35th year with Cerner. In my role, I am a lead consultant specializing in data migrations and electronic health record data remediations. During my tenure at Cerner, I have held several supervisor and managerial positions. Through my professional experience, I have gained skills valuable to the role of school director, including project management, technical analysis, financial analysis, budgeting, proposal preparations, and negotiations. I plan to use my leadership skills to help ensure that my fellow school directors work collaboratively and professionally and are dealing with the school administration, teachers, and members of the public. I believe that providing strong leadership, making informed decisions, and having effective communications with all members of the community, we can continue to provide the best possible cost-effective education to the students of the O.J. Roberts School District. Being a school director is a huge responsibility and something I take very seriously. As a school director, I am responsible for making decisions that will have an impact on the quality of education that our students will receive. I understand the importance of providing effective and responsible educational programs, along with balancing the need to be as efficient steward of public resources as possible. I believe that since I was first elected to the board in 2009, that I have shown my leadership skills and value that and the value I brought to the board. I have served as board president in 2012 and 2017. I believe that it would have a short transition time into becoming an active, productive member of the team. We will continue to be challenged every day in these uncertain financial and pandemic times. We need to utilize our financial resources to ensure that all students are provided with the skills and knowledge they need to become successful citizens once they graduate from the O.J. Roberts School District. I would like to thank the members of the Board of School Directors for their commitment to serve. As you as you use your time, energies, and talents to serve the students and the community of the Owen J. Roberts School District. Thank you, and I'll take comments or questions at this time.
Well, you're going to be a little bit more interesting to interview since a lot of the questions you've already experienced.
Yeah, but I can still get tripped up.
I know you can. Why are you interested in returning to the board at this time?
Well, I'm kind of interested or kind of disappointed that I left to begin with, but cannot undo that at this point in time. You know, I miss it. You know, there's a lot to be said, you know, with providing, you know, the camaraderie of the board and adding the skills that I have, you know, as working, you know, with the board. You know, it's something that I'm passionate about. You know, I've always taught, I mean, to me, I'm passionate about public education, you know, and I'm committed to public education. And, you know, as a school director, I'm very committed to the work that I put in. It takes a lot of time and effort. And I think, you know, you all know that, you know, being a school director is not, you know, a 2-hour a week endeavor. I mean, it can take, you know, 6-10 hours a week, you know, with prep time, reading all the documentation. But I'm ultimately, you know, I miss it, and I'm still committed to public education.
Very good. At this particular moment, what qualities and skills and experiences that you have would you bring to the board that we might not be experiencing at this moment with the very difficult challenges we have been facing? I'm sure you've been watching and know what we're up against at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the only thing that I think that I really have is I do have experience being part of the board. I mean, I understand, you know, what it's like to, you know, work with others, work as a team of 9 or a team of 10. I mean, you know, as Mr. Deal said at the last committee of the whole, you know, each one of us is our own individual member of the board, and we have really no power as an individual. The power of the board is as a team and how well we work together as a team, you know, to make the decisions to move the school district forward and the best decisions for the students. So, I mean, for me, I see myself, you know, as somebody that can, you know, work well as a team. I worked in a team environment, you know, my whole professional life, you know, and we all have to, you know, listen to each other's opinions, you know, and the last person talked about, you know, it's important to, you know, debate the topics that the board has come in front of them, you know, it's, you know, and to be respectful about everybody's opinions. And, you know, in the end, you know, the board will have a vote and there'll be an outcome, and we have to respect that outcome. And then our goal as a board is to, you know, move on and implement, you know, the decisions that we make as a whole.
All right. What do you expect or what you remember as being the most difficult thing about being a board member? How do you deal with criticism that you might get from the outside, or how do you respond to interaction with the public? If
For
that
me,
may be a better question.
for me, criticism's tough because I take it personally. You know, but I also understand that, you know, as a school director, it's very difficult to please everybody. But, you know, because there will always be, you know, things that, you know, we should have done this or you could have done it this way. But for me, as long as we go through the process, you know, and we, you know, discuss all the things or the topics that come before the board, and the board, you know, comes with the outcome and we make the decision, you know, all in, you know, in the end, the objective is to make, you know, the experience for our students the best possibly we can with the resources we have.
All right, I thank you very much. And again, I thank you for all your past service, and thank you for coming out this evening. And we will go on from here.
All right,
Good
thank
to
you.
see you, Mr. Kleinfelter.
Yep.
Okay, our next interview, the board member will be Ms. Jennifer Munson, and the candidate will be Ms. Michelle Fries.
right. We'll wait a minute to make sure Michelle's got her technology working. There we go.
Hey, thank you, everyone, and thank you for working with my schedule today. As you can see, I'm in my car, so.
All right, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you and all the other candidates for your willingness to put your name forward. And as we've been doing for the other candidates, you can give us a few minutes of description of your background, why you're interested in joining the board, and then I'll follow up with some questions.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you all for your time. My interest and experience is wanting to bring my over 20 years of municipal law experience to this board. I moved into OJR approximately 20 years ago, or at least the area. Followed my daughter through school there, and I'm happy to be a resident. And I want to be able to be further that, being a part of this board and working through the community and addressing the issues that the school district is facing and will continue to face as the world changes.
All right. Would you like to give us a little bit more background on like how long have you been in OJR? Schooling, some other stuff that we got some background on like schooling and where people had lived from some of the other candidates. So it'd be very helpful to get that from you too.
Sure, and thank you for advising me of that as I came late to the discussion today. I moved to the area to attend Villanova Law School in 1994, resided in the OJR school district while I attended law school, commuting to Villanova, moved as far away as Birdsboro for 10 years, and then returned to OJR so my daughter would be able to attend OJR from elementary school through graduation, which occurred this year. So we moved back into the district in 2007 and have resided there ever since. As I mentioned, I attended Villanova Law School. Since that time, my majority of my practice has been in municipal law, either on the assurance defense side or in typical municipal law. I just left a municipal meeting. So I understand how governing bodies work and how the interplay is with the public through that experience.
Okay. And just acknowledging that you did have a bit of a conflict tonight that made you late. Could you just give us a sense of whether you expect conflicts like that to occur regularly, or is this something that you wouldn't have to deal with once you have solid dates on your calendar?
No, once I had solid dates on my calendar, that would not be an issue. And this is not a meeting that I typically attend. My boss had a conflict in another municipality, so she had asked me to attend this meeting. So this is not one that I would typically have a conflict with. And as you mentioned, once dates would be on my calendar, I would ensure I would not have conflicts.
All right. Okay, on to some other questions. Like the others, I'm bouncing back and forth between things as well. So could you tell us about a time when you had to make a decision and you changed your mind? What sort of information or interactions with other people affected that decision?
I do that almost routinely in my law practice. I'll receive a question from a client. My initial reaction may be X, and once I start diving into it, I learn that the precedent in the law is actually Y. So I've learned that you can't always rely, while you like to follow your gut, in what I do and what would be involved with the school board, it would be learning what is required and how to be able to change once you get all the knowledge that's available to you to make the appropriate decision.
All right, and what do you view the responsibilities of the school board to be?
I think there's many hats that the school board wears. Initially, I believe they're policy setting, but I do know once that occurs, it goes further. And I think it's a juggling act because I've thought about this quite a bit over the last week, and particularly after the last school board meeting and everything that was discussed and the public comments, and understanding that there are many hats, and at times, as I said, initially you're the policy setter, but at times you're the adjudicator. And you have to be able to balance those hats, receive the information to allow you to make those decisions, but also have the ability to be a fair and impartial adjudicator when the time would come.
let's see, you mentioned the last school board. How often have you attended school boards or school board meetings or watched them in the case of our recorded ones recently?
I have not personally attended routinely, but I do review them. I'll say if not monthly, at least bi-monthly. I will observe them. I always review the agenda. If there's something on the agenda that I believe is important, I will definitely watch the video the next day to understand what's going on.
So what do you think are currently our biggest challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for any school district at the present time is what is education going to look like in the next month, month and a half. I think that's something that the entire country is facing, as well as universities. Beyond that, I think that there are personnel decisions that have to be made that, again, it's a juggling act that the board has to recognize what their role is and gather the information when the time is appropriate, and letting the constituents to understand what the role of the board is in those situations. And
go ahead.
And how the board can get involved when some of those situations occur while allowing it to be fair and impartial at the ultimate outcome.
You bring up personnel, and sometimes it's necessary to, you know, on a board, you know something, but you're not allowed to share it. Have you had to deal with that in your law practice as well?
Oh, quite a bit. And counseling the governing bodies that we represent that this is information that, particularly we're in a litigious society, that you have to be careful not letting it out because there's laws protecting this. And with the information you may have or you may have at the time may not be correct. So until there's a final resolution, and letting the governing bodies and the personnel understand that these are confidential for a reason. That's why there's exceptions in the Sunshine Law to allow for personnel discussions in executive sessions. And I think that's a very difficult thing for the public to understand. And I think there's a lot of questions as to why isn't this happen? Why doesn't this happen? And again, you have to, that's an education that you have to provide to the residents as to the hats you have to wear and how to balance that.
And when you are faced with a tough decision, for instance, let's say we have to make a budgetary decision, cut something, or, you know, balance out a budget, what sort of information do you seek out to help you make that decision?
As a school board member, I initially would turn to the personnel that have been hired for that information, review that information, see what additional information may be available either from them or from additional sources, and just use all available resources to gather the information. Speak with my co-board members as permitted to gather information they may have or may have sought out, and then weigh everything to make the what I would hope would be the appropriate decision and be able to support that decision. And try to ensure that all constituents, students, employees that are involved have their voice heard in making those decisions, and then trying to understand from all perspectives.
Have you had any experience with equity issues, like where you had to work towards racial equity? Or
I personally
any other sort of equity?
I personally have not. I entered the law profession in the mid-90s where everything was kind of altering. So I did have to face some adversity in coming that way, but not in any type of racial equity or diversity issues that I can recall at the moment. I have dealt with employment issues, but none where I've had a discrimination involving a constituent or a resident in any of my jurisdictions.
Okay. Let's see. And what do you think you would enjoy the most about being on the OJR board?
Being involved in continuing to make OJR a great community and place to live, work, and learn. Helping make the decisions to continue that.
And perhaps your least favorite part?
It's always, confrontation's always hard, but I think there's always a time and necessary for it. So understanding that, I think that would probably be the hardest part, but I would not be concerned with doing that.
Confrontation with others on the board, or with community, or with the administration and teachers, with or just any context?
Confrontation, addressing hard issues would be the difficult part. I believe in a board working together gets the most accomplished. I think this board, from what I've observed, has overcame some prior issues that it was faced with as far as working together and accomplishing things. So I would not foresee turning back to that. I would hope that we would not go back that way, because I don't think anything gets accomplished that way. But confrontation, just having to make the tough decisions, and but making the right decision with the information available. But confrontation, when you might have to address somebody that it's an uncomfortable situation in any format that you're involved with.
That's 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, I think we got through a good number of questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to turn my video back off and listen to the rest of the discussion on my drive home. But again, I thank you all for your time. I thank you for serving. I do know it is a very time consuming, and I am prepared to undertake that time to prepare and be involved in the board, and making sure everybody has a voice in the community.
Thank you, Mrs. Fries.
Okay, our next interview will be conducted by Mr. Paul Friel, and he will be interviewing Mr. Clifford DeFore.
Awesome. So Clifford, how are you today? I guess we'll wait to get you unmuted and your video up here.
Okay. Let me know when you can hear me.
Oh, we can see you and we can hear you. So
great, fantastic.
That's great. So with that, I'll as you've seen the format here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience with O&J, your work history, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Absolutely. So I lived in O&J Roberts School District for 20 plus years. I have 3 children at O&J. I have Tim going to 11th grade, and I have twins, Ava and Addison, going into the 6th grade. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where I attended Susquehanna Valley High School. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in legal studies. I attended Robert Morris for accounting, and went to Penn State for client server technologies. And I have a master's degree at Penn State in science for information science. So as you can see, I love school. A lot of schooling.
Yes.
So I currently work at the Vanguard Group. I've been there for 20 plus years. A portion of it on the business side and a portion on the IT side. I'm currently a technology leader. I can do everything in technology, from writing code to architecture to design. I'm currently working in cloud technologies. I lead a team of 4 engineers there. I did spend 1.5 years on the O&J Roberts School Board. And after the school board, I moved on to bigger and better things, and I loaded band instruments in a truck for marching band for one season. We've had a number of great decisions while I was on the board: the Chromebooks, the hiring a superintendent, the budgeting, opening new schools, the cafeteria transitioning. So there were a number of important and tough decisions that I worked on while on the board. So I'm going to tell you a little bit why I want to, why I'm here today, right, to apply once again to be a member of the school board. It was very exciting. It's a lot of work. It was actually more work than I anticipated, but it was also very rewarding to be a member of the board. So the things that I look forward to is advancing technologies in the school to match today's challenges. As you know, we have a number of challenges, and a lot of them have to do with technologies and how we're going to operate going forward for our children, right? So one of the things I also want to do while I was there is leading a new way of learning and technology in the classroom, both a virtual classroom as well as technology within the classroom is very important. So I also like to aid in helping the technology group at our high school to obtain technical certificates. And these technical certificates can actually lead to employment after high school without going to college. I think that's important because, you know, our kids after school face many challenges, and this is a way that they can actually earn a living without necessarily getting a college degree. But, you know, in my world, certificates go a long way. There's other things I'd like to accomplish while I'm on the board. Single passwords for parents, having one password for multiple applications. I'm a musician, so I also support the arts. I also support K through 12 language learning. And one of the other reasons why I decided to run at this time is I've been asked by a number of friends and families of minority communities to have more representation within the district, right? Everywhere from the board to teachers in our school district. So I really am concerned sometimes with how other people feel about ONJ, right? And so people are reaching out to me asking me if I'm going to run for a school board because they need more representation. That's something that I couldn't ignore.
Very good. So impressive resume there. Clearly an underachiever with school, but and I appreciate as everybody else stepping up and putting your name in here and your prior service. Let me just ask you about your prior service. What was the most challenging things that you've dealt with, and you know, how did the board operate and versus how you thought it should operate, and you know, what do you see as the biggest challenge from your time on the board, as far as that you didn't expect and you had to overcome? Because you talk a lot about what you want to achieve at the school district, and you know, the role of the board is governance. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about school board's role, where it starts and ends, and kind of where your past experience came into play and what you learned from that?
Sure. So that was a lot. I hope I cover everything here for you, Paul. But looking at the board today, from the board when I served was kind of night and day. I mean, really. The previous board, we had a number of challenges that we were able to overcome, but my concern was the lack of process for the board. I remember joining the board and expecting very regimented processes to make decisions and move forward with some of the things that we needed to accomplish. And one of the biggest challenges for me was be able to adjust to that type of adversity on the board. I didn't expect some of the adversity that I found on the board. I'm hoping that the new board is able to kind of work through some of the issues of our current challenges and be able to work together as a team. Even though, you know, I made friends with many people on the board while I was on the board, I really felt that the board didn't work as I really would like them to work. Some of the toughest challenges, of course, selecting a new superintendent was very challenging. We spent many hours during the week, Monday through Friday, many interviews. It was a very important decision for our school district. I think we did an excellent job. I think we selected an excellent superintendent. It was a board decision, right? So it was very informative, and being thrown into the board during a lot of other things like the opening of the new schools, right? So one of the things that I wanted to do is, you know, I wanted to dive in deeper into the school, and I interviewed with teachers, and I talked to students, and we went to the classroom, and we looked at the challenges of operating the school. So the school is just not, it's the kids who are the most important, but it's also financial responsibility for the entire community, right? So budgeting we had some budget challenges, as you guys probably may have today, and diving into that was also very interesting. So I really learned a lot. So if I'm selected to the board again, I would take everything that I've learned and apply it to being on the board again. Did I cover everything, Paul?
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. I loaded, I was trying to follow up on what all that you gave us, and you gave us a lot there. One of the things you brought up is, in terms of diversity and social equity. And since you brought that up, what's the role of public education and social equity and social justice issues in your mind? When you
Sure.
talk about diversity?
Sure. Yeah, that's very important. As you know, I mean, we've all seen what's going on in today's world, right? And it's hard to imagine that we're actually at this point, in our society. I think that having a good representation in the schools is what many parents have told me in the minority community. They really feel that they're not properly represented in the school district, and it's really concerning to them, which I can understand it. When I first came to ONJ with our kids were in private school. They started off in private school, and we transitioned them to ONJ because ONJ offers so much more. Not only just education, but all the clubs in the community, and they'll make new friends around where we live. Fortunately, we had a magnificent principal at the time, Dr. Lloyd, at North Coventry, and she really helped us to get acclimated to the school. But I think with the social justice that's going on today, I think parents really feel that they don't have a voice, unfortunately, at ONJ, and it's very concerning.
That is obviously a concern that we're all aware of, obviously, and want to make strides towards. How do we move ourselves forward there?
Sure.
So, talking about public education a little bit, what's the biggest, besides COVID and the obvious, what's the biggest challenge facing public education in K through 12 today in your mind?
Okay, so when I was on the board, and I mentioned before, I did a kind of a deep dive into the school, and I went to the school and I sat in the classrooms and I talked to the teachers. It felt like I was still in school. School at ONJ felt like my school when I went to high school at Susquehanna. I felt like it really hasn't advanced as much as I thought it would advance. And I think that's one of the reasons that drove me to be on the school board, because I need to understand why we're not advancing as far as technology in the classroom, why we haven't bought in Apple, why haven't we bought in Chromebooks sooner than we have, why haven't we expanded some of our current technologies to the cloud, why haven't we given our kids more education towards technology when a lot of the future jobs are technical positions. Now, we have an amazing engineering courses at ONJ Roberts. I mean, absolutely amazing. I mean, it's probably one of the best, absolutely the best I've ever seen, and probably one of the best in the state. So I think they do a great job there. I think we really need to look at how we're teaching kids. In a way, I think we're going to be forced to teach kids differently, right? With our you got three choices that we're going to be faced with. We have kids going back to school full time, we're going to have a hybrid, or we're going to have all online school, right? So those technologies, we're going to be forced to making decisions, technical decisions on how our kids are going to learn going forward. And I think I'm the right person to help make those technical decisions, or at least be an oversight and understanding what technologies we're using.
That's 10 minutes.
Great. So, well, I'll tell you what, Clifford, I'll give you a closing a statement. So I'll let it. I'll be your choice.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to thank everybody for allowing me to interview. It's been a pleasure meeting some of you guys. I've popped into meetings now and then. I keep up with some of the school board topics. A lot of it's word of mouth, believe it or not. So I understand, exactly what issues we're facing today as we face the same issues at work. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for allowing me to interview today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for putting your name forward, Clifford. Appreciate it. Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jackie.
Okay, thank you. Our next interviewer will be Mr. John Deal, who will be interviewing Aaron Marcellus.
Hi, Ms. Marcellus. How are you?
you.
So I will allow you a couple of minutes to give an introductory statement, and then I'll have some questions for you.
Okay, sure. So I wanted to thank everyone for considering me for this position. The main reason that I'm interested in being a school board director is because I truly believe this is an amazing school district. I am a mother of 3 children. I've experienced all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And I'm highly invested in the education that my children receive here, academic, social, emotional, you know, the whole gamut. Now more than ever, we are obviously embarking on a territory that public education has never seen, and I feel important that people and parents choose Owen J. Roberts as the educational provider for their children. I come from a family of educators. I have also spent my entire adult life being in public education, so I am a champion of public education. And I believe that I have a unique perspective to offer and a lot to contribute to help putting our students first, as well as moving this district forward in a way that is both sustainable and fiscally responsible to all of our community members.
Great, thank you. So aside from the exquisite compensation, the lavish benefits, and all the popularity that comes with being a board member, why are you deciding to step up now, as opposed to potentially having the opportunity to run in 2019 on the general election slate? Why now versus last year? Did anything change?
I think it mostly is because I know that it is such a time commitment, and my youngest child just finished kindergarten. So I had him at home with me a lot in the evenings, even when my other kids were doing activities. And I feel now that he's going to be entering the 1st grade that I have, you know, some more time to dedicate to this, because it's very time consuming and I don't take it lightly.
Would it be your intention to, this term that we're appointing to only runs through next election? Well, not this year, but next year, November. Would it be your intent, would you say, to potentially run in the next election?
Yes, I think so. I actually had considered it in the I felt like I kind of came into considering it a little too late, so I didn't feel quite prepared to run in the election that just occurred. So I do feel that this was an opportunity that allowed me to possibly get invested in it now, and I would definitely consider running at the election in the future.
Okay, my next question is kind of a hypothetical situation for you. Let's assume that you are appointed to this board position. And obviously we're in the midst of some pretty turbulent times with strong opinions on both sides of just about every issue that comes to us. And so let's say it's an issue on which you've been very vocal and prolific, either to your friends, in social media, wherever it may be, about where you stand, which I think as an individual board member, you have every right to your beliefs. However, you're advised by the district solicitor that you're not permitted to speak or post anything about the topic pending the resolution of either investigation, legal adjudication, whatever it might be. And in fact, the things that you're not permitted to speak about may be things that you believe very strongly in. So you attend a board meeting and all of a sudden you're berated for ideas that you actually agree with, but you're not allowed to say anything. How do you deal with a situation like that?
I think that's pretty easy for me. I feel that when you're speaking as an individual, it's much easier to share your opinion. And when you are part of the school board, you're obviously representing the community members, the students, the taxpayers, everyone involved. So you have to remember that you are, you know, not speaking as yourself, the person, but as part of a group that's representing a big entity and the entire district. So I don't think that that would be difficult for me to not, you know, share my personal opinion about whatever the issue would be.
So let's see. My next question relates to kind of interaction between board members. Obviously, the 8 of us that are currently on the board were kind of put there, 6 of the 8 by the last election, 2 were kind of still serving their terms. And from time to time, we disagree on things, right? We just have different opinions. How do you balance the right to maintain your own opinion versus acceding to the majority of the board, perhaps, or maybe stated more clearly? Let's say the board comes up with a decision that you don't particularly agree with. How do you deal with that? Is it, how would you, let's say it's a decision that you don't feel is right. What do you do pending the vote itself? What happens after the vote?
So do you mean if the vote went ahead and it passed with a decision that I didn't really agree with?
That's correct.
I think that I would probably have to accept the fact that the majority of the district had spoken, and that is the way that it goes with a school board. I obviously know that when you select a group of school board members, you will have differing opinions. I think that's actually the beauty of it. And I think that disagreement sometimes is healthy and can be a catalyst for change, as long as it's what some of the other people have said, respectful and, you know, not personal. But if I felt that it was a decision that I disagreed with, but the board did not, then I would just have to accept it.
Well, Ms. Marcellus, I'm going to conclude my questions here, but I do want to yield my time back to other members of the board in case they have any questions in particular anyone might want to ask you. I do want to end by saying, though, that, you know, we get a lot of emails. There's certainly a lot of comments about things we're doing right, mostly about things we're doing wrong. But I really appreciate the fact that when given the opportunity, 8 people stepped up to say, I'm willing to try to make a difference. And I just want to let you know, regardless of the vote outcome, I'd be happy to serve with any of the people that I've heard interview with so far. But the challenge that we have is we have to select who we think is our best candidate. So thanks to you, but I will yield back my time to my fellow board members in case there's any questions they had that I didn't ask yet.
Sure, thank you.
Any questions?
Hey, Aaron, just real quickly, just what do you think the biggest challenge you would face, you know, personally taking on this board seat, as you look at it? What do you think is the biggest hurdle that you would have to overcome, or the school district has to overcome?
That the school district has to overcome?
Yeah, as a board member, what do you think is the biggest challenge here?
Well, obviously, other than the global pandemic that we're in, but that's kind of goes without saying. Right now, I think that the district has received some negative press, and I would really like to move forward into getting O&J Roberts back into getting some positive press and highlighting some of the wonderful things that happen in this district, because there are many wonderful things that happen. And I think that it's a shame that we've had a few things lately that have not been so positive. Anyone else?
Melissa, I think, did you want to ask something? You're still muted.
Sorry about that. No, I was just going to say that I think John covered the questions very well, and I think the answers were well received, and her statement made a lot of the answers easier too, if that makes any sense.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your consideration. I do appreciate it.
Okay, we have one final interview this evening, and Mr. John Melnizek will be interviewing Ms. Rita Pedersen.
Good evening. Are you there yet?
I am.
All you see is Melissa.
Oh.
And I believe I'm unmuted and my video is going. If
You are. Everything is working.
Okay, thanks.
There you are.
All right. Well, as you've seen in the past, we'll give you a couple minutes to give an opening statement and tell us about yourself.
Okay, I'm not going to take it personally that I was last. I'm going to go with we were saving it. So, good evening. My name is Rita Peterson. My husband Jay and I live in West Vincent Township. We have 3 sons in the school. Our oldest, Jack, is a rising sophomore at the high school. And our sons, Tom and Will, will be in 7th and 8th grade at the middle school next year. So best wishes to Mr. Stoltzfus for having both of the Peterson boys in one building at once. After the last few months, I know it's been a challenge for me having them both home all day. I grew up on Long Island. I am the daughter of 2 educators who dedicated their entire professional career to public education and instilled in the 5 of us how important public education is to a community. I studied collective bargaining and labor economics at Cornell University. And at 22, I packed 2 bags and moved to California to start my career at IBM. And I've had a long and varied and wonderful career in the public sector and in the private sector. And I'm happy to now be at Steel River Playhouse in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Our professional and personal lives took us around the United States for many years and around the world, in fact. And 15 years ago, when our oldest son was an infant, I felt the need to be closer to family. And we could have lived anywhere. We had complete geographic freedom. We spent 6 months choosing where we would raise our family, and we chose this section of Chester County, and we chose the Owen J. Roberts School District. We are pleased and we have enjoyed becoming part of this district and part of this community. As the current business manager at Steel River Playhouse, my work is focused on being the public face of one of the largest community theaters in the region. We have 10,000 patrons and 20,000 visitors every year to the heart of High Street in Pottstown. I'm proud of the work I do to revitalize the Pottstown community, and I'm immensely proud of my work in bringing arts to this community. At Steel River, we welcome all and do not let financial limitations keep students from having an education in the theater arts. Over the last year, I've had the chance to present testimony to the PA House committees on the importance of funding in the arts, especially for local communities like Pottstown. And like many of us who run small businesses, I have been faced with tough decisions since March when our theater was shut down due to COVID. I know the work we will have to do as a school community to keep our students and staff safe, because they are the same conversations I have every day as a live theater venue. We are all trying to make the best decisions we can in these circumstances. Over the last 20 years, I have had the honor of serving as president or vice president in the Cornell Alumni Association of Class Officers. I have dedicated years of service to ensuring access to Ivy League education to as many students as possible while growing this alumni network. I have conducted interviews with high school seniors around the region and around the US on behalf of the university as part of their application process. I am acutely aware of how important the right college choice is, especially when it costs as much as it does. And I know that we as a community want to do our best to create and to help a competitive OJR graduate. As a volunteer in this community, I have spent hundreds of hours helping our students. I am most proud of the 5 years I spent on the West Vincent PTA board, 2 years as its president. I had the privilege of joining West Vincent while it was still a new building, brimming with possibility and beginning to create its identity. I felt the responsibility of helping to set its tone. For me, I approached every decision asking myself, are we being inclusive to all, and will this promote our community? We made sure that dollars were spent in ways to include all students. We prioritized programs and events that took place at the school during the day to ensure that all students could benefit. One of my favorite programs there was the talent show, which brought a venue for every child in the building to step foot on stage who was willing and able to share their talent with the community. And it was a no-cut talent show, and that meant sometimes we had more than 40 acts, and it was a very long night, but they were brave, and we had an opportunity to support them, and that was important to me. I have been lucky enough in my professional and volunteer life to blend the things I care deeply about, inclusion and the arts, and I really hope to have the opportunity to continue to do that on the school board.
Well, thank you very much. I went to the University of Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
So I will not hold that against you.
Okay, sure.
So I tend to use humor to diffuse tensions.
Okay.
And if you're sitting there at number 8,
Yes.
if you're like me, I'm sure you're a little stressed out. What do you do in these kind of situations to either alleviate your own stress and also to make others feel comfortable in that situation?
I think first and foremost, as a person who works in the performing arts and works in a theater, I take every opportunity to give people a voice and feel like they can have a voice. And like yourself, I tend to use humor, especially self-effacing humor. And so I certainly got up and paced a few times, but found myself back in my chair. But the most important thing for me is always to try to make people feel as comfortable as they can in the moment, as uncomfortable as it may be.
Okay. So in your letter to us,
Mm-hmm.
you use the axiom, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Yes.
Tell me like how you have followed that in either your professional or your community life.
Absolutely. When I first went to go work for IBM, it was in the turn of the century. It was in the year 2000. And I found I was the only professional woman in my building. Not only was to use the restroom, I had to badge out, go down 2 hallways, down a set of stairs, badge into another place to find a ladies' room, passing 3 men's rooms on my way. That changes your perspective. And it changed when I had the opportunity to get into leadership positions at IBM. I wanted to be part of that solution, and I wanted to make sure that we were going to the places we needed to go to find candidates that would help diversify what we were doing. A big push at IBM at that time was that as a worldwide company, we look like our worldwide customers. And I got the opportunity to be involved in those kind of programs, and I ran with them. They were important to me.
Okay, thank you. Now, you've mentioned you worked closely with West Vincent Elementary School.
Yes.
And I was there at the Blue Ribbon ceremony the last time we were able to get together.
Yes.
And it was wonderful. What do you see, since you know West Vincent better than the other schools, are there any special challenges you see with that school in regards to how we're going to deal with this COVID and instituting, maybe face masks or not face masks?
Right. I don't know. We have an interesting environment in West Vincent, and our student body has changed just in the 10 years that I have been involved in the school. We're a little bit different in that most of us didn't grow up here. Most of us are not lifelong OJ-RA residents. And in fact, we have quite a few families that are first-generation Americans. And so one issue or one concern I have about West Vincent and how we best support our students there is recognizing that they may not be in a home in which English is the first language being spoken, in which they have the same access or the same or not local knowledge that many of us do. And I think that's something that is a positive challenge. It's a challenge that we can work and affect and change and support these students the best that we can.
Okay. I'm going to kind of piggyback on one of Paul's questions, since it came to my mind with your comments there. What's our role as public educators to increase diversity, to talk about social justice, those kind of issues that may be facing some of the students at West Vincent?
I think, and this goes back to some of the work I did in the talent organization at IBM, we want to look like our customers, and we weren't doing that. And so we had to change our applicant pool. We had to change how we were meeting the candidates where they are. And I think we have an opportunity, and I think we have to take the opportunity to embrace diversity in our staff, both racially, geographically, across the board. I have had my sons have had wonderful teachers here. We have had wonderful experiences here. And one of the things that really struck me that first time we went to a Meet the Teacher night at the middle school, my husband and I walked out of school. He grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and went to college in Seattle. I grew up in New York. we realized that every single one of our son's teachers was from Pennsylvania, and all but one had been educated in this region. And that's a positive thing, that people want to come back and people want to give back to their community. But it's also a place that we can make an opportunity for change, because I think the more diverse thought, the more diverse experience that we can give our children, the greater we will prepare them for what is beyond here, because not all of them are going to stay here, and we have to prepare them for the entire world.
That's 10 minutes.
Well, you finished just in time.
Well, there you go.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I'd like to thank all of our applicants. It's going to be a very hard decision, and we really thank you all for your stepping to the plate.
Welcome.
All right, so like we mentioned, because that was the end of everyone, right, Jackie?
Yep, that's it. Everybody's.
We're gonna break for a 15-minute recess, and then we're gonna come back. So I think to best do this, we talked about everyone muting themselves and stopping their video.
Turn it off.
All right, so we'll return at 9 p.m.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Are they waiting for me? No, 15-minute recess.
You guys, we should play. Should we play?
Wait.
Oh, obstacle.
All right, I think, are we just missing John?
Which John?
Malnazar.
Malnazar.
I'll text him.
Back.
All right. We got everyone back. All right, Jackie.
Okay. Why don't we have Paul, if you wouldn't mind, sharing the Google Sheet? And then I would just ask that board members choose a maximum of their top 4 candidates. Once Paul shares the sheet, inserting 4 for the top choice and down to 1 for the 4th choice. And then really the high score on the top 4 will move on to the next round. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, none of us wants to go first now.
First one talk goes first. You're up, then. All right, this is hard. I'm just saying that right now.
It's
Everybody's
very difficult.
good. This is tough to do this.
Why can't I edit it, Paul?
Oh no.
Why isn't it working? Do I have drive on here? Oh, hold on. All right, there we go. Thank you.
You gotta go back to Zoom.
Ooh. There- Okay. Okay.
Has everyone entered their maximum of top 4?
No, not yet. Almost.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just double checking.
Oops, wrong one.
Are you still working, Mr. Frio? Let me make sure.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
hold on, wait. Did I do that wrong? I did something wrong. Did I do it
No,
wrong?
no, no. I mean, it might be fine.
All right. I need some technological help. I hate Google Docs.
I know. It's okay. Okay. Is everyone complete? You want to double check your numbers, your scores, just to be sure?
Let it rip.
Oh, no, but wait, stop.
Okay.
If there's a number showing on your screen and not on my screen, just click out of out of the box that number is. It will show up on the shared screen.
Probably best thing is when you're done, put your cursor in your name, on your name.
That's a good idea.
Oh, now I gotta go back on the shared screen.
How about I just run down the names that don't have the cursor over to the left on their names?
Jackie, I'm moving it.
Okay, thank you. How about Mrs. Booth? Are you done? Looks. Mrs. Booth, are you finished? Not sure if she can hear me.
Melissa, you're still muted.
Both she and Paul have two cursors on what I'm looking at, so maybe that's happening there too. 'Cause
Okay.
It
It looks like everyone is done.
Roll call, everybody done?
Last call, Mrs. Booth?
Oh, hold on, Paul's over.
Oh, okay, so Paul went over.
I'm tempted to change, but I just want to be very upfront. Am I allowed to change after I see how the totals are coming out? Or is that cheating?
Would you have changed if you didn't see the totals?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of these were very difficult calls, you know, as far as who to rate first, second, third, fourth.
I don't know. I just go with my first grade teacher. You just do your first thing and close your eyes and hope that's the right
You can
answer.
also ask the solicitor.
This is Crumrine. Everybody is completed.
Okay, thank you very much. It looks like our top four are Mr. DeFore, Mr. Doherty, Mrs. Peterson, I'm sorry I mispronounced your name earlier, and Mr. Foy. Anything else, Mrs. Prophet?
No, I think if everyone's selected, we're done with item 4 then.
Okay.
Okay, so then those 4 candidates will come back tomorrow. We talked about interviewing for 15 minutes. Is everyone okay with 15 minutes?
I would say if needed.
Yeah, I'd say if needed.
needed.
I don't know how much more, but
Maximum.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to do the same thing, are going to randomly, I don't know if we discussed that. Are we randomly choosing who is asking questions, or anyone, free for all, ask questions?
I thought everyone was going to be able to ask each of the candidates questions that we might feel.
I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, I think more free for all this time.
Okay.
All right, if everyone's good with that.
Yep.
Jackie, can you verify that all the candidates that pass through to tomorrow night will be available for the meeting?
I will do that. I'll confirm. And we'll make sure we send them a Zoom link for tomorrow.
For the record, this was horrible.
I know.
In a good way. It was horrible. It was a good problem to have, that we had a lot of really great candidates, and I had a super hard time.
Quite honestly, could have worked with anybody who put their name in, would have been able to be on this board. So that's a good problem to have.
It is a good
Yeah,
problem.
it is.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, and I think we should point out that even with tomorrow night, as we've kind of thought about this process, that tomorrow night we'll do a similar scoring system, but any board member can make a motion to nominate any of the candidates, including candidates that didn't pass through to the second round if you feel so led. It's just this process gives us a little bit of feel for consensus of the board before we move into that. And I hope to have an opportunity to explain a little bit more about my voting tomorrow night as we discuss who those folks may be.
All right. Is everyone okay if I move on to item 5?
Please.
Yes.
You need a gavel, Madam President.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use your shoe. Do whatever.
Might break the heel. Item 5, public comment. Information, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegates pertaining to any item. Speakers are to indicate your name and township residence. Speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in future deliberations. There is that reminder also that you can email us if you want a written response, and then the guideline for how to raise your hand. I just ask if we can, just a reminder, there is a board meeting on Monday, the 20th. So if we can try to keep this surrounding this topic, that would be great. We will be able to talk about more on the 20th. And there's always the option to email us.
Mrs. Prophet, there is one hand. It's Mrs. Colleen Blue.
Okay.
Mrs. Blute, you are on mic.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, Dr. Lloyd, board members, Ms. Crumrine, and residents. My name is Colleen Blute, and I am from North Coventry Township. This can't wait until the 20th of July. At the last meeting for the school board in June of 2020, I asked and was informed that the high school fall 2020 cheer coaches were hired. I reviewed the meeting agendas and found the following. In April of 2020, at the board meeting, Lindsay Place and Michelle Mast were hired. Then proceeded to May 2020, where their appointment was rescinded. Following that meeting, the position was then advertised. To date, no fall 2020 cheer coach has been board approved, meaning that there was no way there could be any public comment regarding the cheer coaches. There was, as advertised on the OJR Athletics website, a cheer workout session today. There were 2 non-board approved adults running the workout session. What are you hiding? This totally lacks transparency. With last year's serious injuries exceeding 0, which is the expectation from PIAA, I have been told that there were 7+ serious injuries. How can the board allow non-approved adults to coach? The negative press towards the school district increases when formal hiring procedures are not followed, thus opening the possibility of liability. Your transparency as a board continues to be lacking. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Blute. So I'm just going to try to answer from what information I do have. And then if Dr. Lloyd wants to fill in at all, I know this question was asked at the June meeting, and it was stated that once they were hired, they would be placed on the July school board agenda for approval. And then once they've completed their required PIAA training and district training, they'll be able to contact students and their parents. And I know back when this question was brought up, the athletic director was still in the hiring process. I'm not sure if Dr. Lloyd, you're able to elaborate at all.
So that's correct. And so what Mrs. Blute stated is correct, that the cheerleading coaches were in place and then they resigned. And so the athletic director then hired a new cheer coach. And as the board is fully aware, that they have the opportunity to retroactively approve a coach because you don't want the students to miss out on the opportunity to be able to do the preseason conditioning. And so the athletic director has completed his responsibility and has placed a very well qualified cheerleading coach in the position. And so we are able to begin those voluntary preseason conditioning activities.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd.
Prophet, we have another hand raised.
Okay.
This is Andrea Manville. You are unmuted.
Hi, this is Andrea Manival, East Vincent Township. This just couldn't wait till Monday either. I just wanted to ask about the focus groups for the school reopening plan. I did receive an email from East Vincent, from Ms. Sealy, about the focus groups, and that's great. And I appreciate it, but I'm just confused as to the middle school, high school, particularly high school is where I'm most concerned. And is that going to occur with parents at the high school level? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Manival. So I know that they're going to be conducting focus groups with all levels. I'm not quite sure the timing of each. I'm not sure if Dr. Lloyd, you want to jump in on that?
Absolutely. And so today our principals contacted the parents that were interested in participating in focus groups. We did ask that our elementary principals be cognizant that some parents had identified that they had children at the elementary, middle school, and high school, and to notify parents of the opportunities at the middle school and high school. And so it's possible that that was overlooked. We asked Mrs. Mandeville that you please email those principals and tell them that you prefer to participate in their focus groups instead of the one that you were emailed at for East Vincent, if you prefer to participate in a middle school or high school. These focus groups are specifically on the reopening of school. And so the principals are looking for additional input and to answer parents' questions on the reopening of school. So sending children into school is what they'll be focusing on.
Don Foy.
Yeah, hi. So I've already made my introduction earlier. I'm from East Coventry, but they weren't here for all of it. So having seen the outcome of the voting, it doesn't appear like it makes sense for me to continue on. So I'm going to respectfully remove my name from further consideration. And I do want to say that the two candidates that scored higher than me both look like extremely worthy candidates. So good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Foy, for putting your name in, and I appreciate you withdrawing from the process. Unfortunately, I wish we could have interviewed you more, but I appreciate you putting your name in the hat. So,
Tracy Frederick.
Hello, this is Kent Frederick, Tracy Frederick's husband.
West Vincent.
From West Vincent. I'd like to say a few things. I watched all the interviews, and the only candidate who seemed to be aware and capable of dealing with real issues is Michael, pardon me if I mispronounce the name, Ahal. He's got a wide range of experience. He's professional, and he has no stake in the matter other than to put our students first. I didn't hear from any other candidate about the students coming first. That's the real issue here. I'm appalled. It appears very political in your voting, and this is a time for the district to go forward. It's like the right people for the issues. I mean, my experience now with our children is OJR school, the culture of sexual assault and bullying. That's got to change now. I'm very sad that we brought our children here. It's been a very bad experience for us. Now is the time for change. Not by putting somebody in there politically, put somebody in there who's had world experience. And believe me, I don't know any of these people. But he was the most impressive, and I just see politics in this, and it's really sad. Put the students first and only first. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your support for Michael. I would agree with you that I thought he was a great candidate. Paul, have anyone else?
I do not see any other hands up at this time.
Okay.
Mrs. Prophet, I just would ask for a point of order.
Okay.
If Mr. Foy has withdrawn his name, I just would wonder if you and Mr. Deal are thinking that someone then rises to replace Mr. Foy, or you are thinking that you're now only considering 3 candidates for tomorrow.
So Mr. Deal, I was thinking about this as well. I am fine with adding a 4th candidate, and I think it doesn't hurt to get more information.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless anybody on the board has a negative response to that, I'm fine with doing that.
Absolutely think that's the right thing to do. Let's move Michael or the next whoever had the next most votes. forward.
From O&J, they were doing virtual.
It's Michael. He would be the next candidate.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree also.
So tomorrow then will be Michael, Clifford, Daniel, and Rita.
Correct. That's what I have.
And you're going to reach out to everyone to make sure they're definitely still good.
I will do that.
We'll
I'll
get the
confirm
link.
with those 4 candidates.
Okay. All right. All right. I think we're adjourned, guys. All right. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and thank you to all the candidates. It was a pleasure speaking with everyone, and it's great to hear that we have so many people interested in helping us move forward.
Leslie, and I would also add thanks to the people that took the time to email the board with their input on the candidates.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.